The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF different, visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. On today's show, we're going to review Austin FC's 3-1 win over Colorado and preview the next match against Minnesota United. We're also going to chat with Eric Goodman, who covers Austin FC for the Austin Chronicle and was on the ground in Denver for the Den Verde weekend. My name's Landon Cottom, and I'm joined as always by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley. Landon, I was in Denver also, and now I've gotten back. I just feel like the air is different. Like, did something happen while I was away? Did spring come? Or how do you feel about what's going on in this city this week?
I think you were there for it, Jeremiah.
Yeah, it's just victory. Victory makes everything smell and sound different. Yeah.
How have you recovered? Have you fully recovered from the weekend?
I've almost recovered from the weekend, and I've recovered better than Chris Wellhausen has, but I have not. We actually had a moment with the dog this morning. We ended up having to take him to the vet.
Oh no!
And he's okay now, but it was kind of a mess. Like it was a rude awakening. He was stomach issues is probably all I need to say about that, but he's better.
So I got a late night text from Chris Wellhausen the night after the game. I think you were with him. How many people did he text "I love you," and what state was he in when he was doing this?
Well, it was at least a half dozen, and there was one moment we were at this bar after the game, and Andy Lockname showed up, and Chris is like, "Don't leave me alone with Andy Lockname." And then I looked over 20 minutes later, I was like, "Oh no!" Like Chris has Andy in a corner, and so I don't know what conversation they had. And Andy may hate all of us now, but I think it went okay. I'm not sure.
I'm glad you guys had a good time. Chris Wellhausen also had like a little tweet storm that was pretty entertaining that night as well. I think that went on until the wee hours of the morning, it appeared, but I think one of them was Austin FC is the greatest club in the world. And something along the lines of Messi would be on Austin FC's bench or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. And then somebody eventually fed that line to the pilot for our Southwest Airlines flight, who, when we landed, announced that the fans were Austin FC and that we were going to win the World Cup. So I'm not sure where they got their information, but it was great. We were all into it. We all cheered.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm very excited to go to Minnesota this coming weekend. It's not going to be the same thing. Minnesota didn't give us quite as many tickets. I think there's going to be like maybe 20 or 30 of us there instead of the 200 that were in Denver. But I'm very much looking forward to it. It's going to be my first time on a plane since COVID started, and my first time in a new city that's not in Texas since COVID started. So I'm pretty pumped about it. Do you want to talk about the Colorado game?
Let's talk about the Colorado game.
All right. So going into it, leading up to the game, I guess what were our expectations for this game?
Well, I luckily made a prediction, and you said maybe on Twitter recently that you weren't in the prediction business, or like predictions were fruitless, or what was your statement on that?
I don't remember what wording I used, but like picking a scores of a game, just like it seems like nobody knows what the score of a game is going to be. And even if you make an educated guess, it's like, I don't know. It seems like a silly thing to do to me. So I think saying someone's going to win or whatever, but saying like it's going to be 2-1, like you don't know. You don't know what the score is going to be. So what was your prediction?
Well, Chris Bills forced me into making a score prediction on the Striker Live Saturday before the game, and I predicted we would win 2-1. So I feel like
Not
that's
far.
well within that range of expectations. So I felt good about that.
Yeah, well done. I think last week we said Colorado's kind of an unpredictable team, so we don't really know what's going to happen. But let's talk about the lineup before we get into talking about the actual game. So I think there were a few question marks that we weren't sure exactly what was going to happen. In goal, Brad Stuver got the start again. Did that surprise you at all, or do you think because he's the hot hand, looked really good last week, he was going to be in there?
Yeah, I felt like he earned the opportunity to keep his spot. with the way he played last week. And I just don't know how much opportunity, in between games when you're probably practicing, I don't know, what is it, like 3 days and then you fly, I don't know how much a backup can really differentiate themselves. So, I'd expect that he's going to stay there until he gives Josh a reason to sit him out. Did you feel the same way?
I did. I thought that, Stuver definitely earned the next start. The only thing that gave me a little bit of doubt is I was talking to Roberto Silva from the Striker the other day, and he said that like a lot of times when teams have a legitimate goalkeeper competition, they might have a schedule set out, like you're starting this game, you're starting this game, you're starting this game. And he said it's pretty common for teams to do whenever there's not a clear number one. And so I was curious if they maybe had something like that, because it did seem very close in preseason. But if they did have a rotation planned, then Stuver broke that rotation by performing so well, which I'm happy to see that, because I think I don't know, goalkeeping seems like a real kind of a confidence position. Like, you don't want to break Stuver's confidence by taking him out after such a good position, a good performance. So I was happy to see him get the start again. Some of the other surprises on the back line, Matt Besler, his wife actually had a baby the day of the game, and so he stayed home to be with his wife and newborn baby. Congratulations, Matt. What was the name? Miller James?
Yep. Yeah, Miller James Besler. Looks adorable. Matt posted a couple pictures. I think that's, if you're going to have one of your locked-on starters sit out, that's probably the best possible reason for them to miss a game.
Yeah, absolutely. So Julio Cascante started in his spot. The rest of the back line was the same. So it was Sweat, Cascante at the left center back, Romagna in his normal spot, and then Lima at the right back. Then in the midfield is where the next surprise came. So before the game, there was social media posts of Tomas Pochettino getting on an airplane with the rest of the team. Game time rolls around, the lineups come out, and you look at the lineups. Pochettino is not in the starting lineup. You look at the bench, Pochettino is not on the bench. There was no explanation for any of this. It's just, he's just not there. We didn't know what happened to him. And so we didn't find out until about 26 minutes into the game. And the club released a statement saying, quote, "We were recently made aware of a potentially league-related administrative issue regarding Tomas Pochettino's registration. While the league believes there are no issues, they have requested we remove him from the starting lineup out of an abundance of caution. We are hoping to receive resolution shortly." And then Chris Bills asked Josh Wolff this in the press conference after the game. And Wolff said, "We were made aware," essentially quoted the exact thing. So he had kind of, I think they had given him that line to say, like, this is exactly what we're supposed to say and not give any other information. Because Bills kind of pushed him to give a bit more information. It's like, when did we find out? And it got nothing. But the fact that the lineups were delayed coming out and that Pochettino was on the plane and looked like he was going to play, or at least be on the bench, it seems like it was kind of a last minute deal.
Yeah, I think it had to be. That was a good point that I was going to bring up is, the lineups should usually come out an hour before. And I think we got it 20 minutes before or 25 minutes before or something. And there was clearly a hole in the lineup. And when Chris asked, like, the first time he asked, like, Josh gave the answer off the press release, and then Chris tried to ask a follow-up question, and then he got cut off. And then later on, he had the chance to ask it again and kind of got the same answer again. So clearly it's a challenge. And, the other thing is, like, we don't know any more today than we did 2 days ago. And I expect it'll come up again on Tuesday. And I don't know if we'll have any more information then either. So it could be a saga. One would hope not, because this is not a Miami situation where, we have 4 DPs. Like, we only have 2. So, I mean, I can't imagine something it's like a super weird situation that can't get resolved.
Yeah, the way that that just the league and the team talked about it, it doesn't seem like it's something super serious, and hopefully that's the case. But yeah, we just don't have much information. So hopefully we'll find out this week that everything's fine and he'll be available on Saturday. Fagundez ends up starting in his place. So the midfield ends up being Ring, Pereira, and Fagundez. Then in the forward line, the only change, I don't know that it's so much a surprise, but Stroud ends up starting on the right wing instead of Redes. It could have been because of the performance. Stroud did look really good last week in the time that he spent on the field. But also Redes is coming off of a minor injury, so he could just be resting Redes. But I don't really know exactly why he started, but it wasn't, I didn't think too much of it. I thought it could have been either way, and I think most people would be happy with either way, just based on how Stroud and Redes have performed so far. Then for Colorado, Sam Vines, their normal left back was still out, so Kellen Acosta ended up starting at left back again. That was really the only change for them. Let's jump into the game, I guess. So for the first few minutes, Austin kind of struggled to move the ball around. Colorado was defending in a 4-4-2, and they were essentially man marking our center mids. So Pereira and Fagundez were being man marked by Jack Price, and I can't remember who the other one was. And then the two center backs were also being pressed by the two forwards. And so they were putting a lot of pressure on those four players. And so Ring ended up dropping between the center backs. The center backs would split and Ring would drop between them to get on the ball, which is something we didn't see a lot of in the last game and in preseason that much against teams that played just one center forward. So that was kind of a variation we saw just to kind of help move the ball forward. And we would see Houston drop in deep pretty regularly into the midfield to become an option to kind of break that line. And yeah, they had a little bit of difficulty at first, but then it didn't take them too long to kind of get a few steady stretches of possession going. In the 6th or 7th minute, I think it was, Houston drops deep and receives the ball from Fagundez, holds it up, and then plays it out to the right wing to Stroud. Stroud dribbles inside and does a little give and go 1-2 with Houston. Houston one time flicks it over the back line for Stroud, who's running in behind, and gets a shot across the face of goal, but ended up going wide. So that was like really the first chance that Austin got, which was 6 or 7 minutes in, which was a lot better than what we did against LAFC, right? We didn't see a solid chance for a long time against them. So that was an early promising play. And then in the 10th minute, Pereira and Ring kind of corral Eunice Nomley in the midfield. Pereira takes it off of him, drives, and starts a counter, which is something that we've seen a few times from him now, which is really, really great to see from him. And it's kind of a breakaway with the back line kind of on their heels. And he's got Stroud on his right, Cecilio on his left, and Houston is kind of trailing him just to his left. And he tries to play Stroud through on the right, plays a through ball behind the center back, and he can't quite get there. And I almost think maybe he would have been better to maybe cut it over to Cecilio with Houston running in there, and Cecilio would have had some options and would have been on his strong foot. But maybe he could have had some better awareness there. But again, really promising to see him starting counterattacks like that. I think the next moment of interest was in the 20th minute when Ben Sweat goes down with an injury to his left knee, and it looked very painful. I don't know what you guys could see from inside the stadium there, but you couldn't see much. Like, it didn't look like much happened, but just the way he reacted, it looked pretty bad.
Yeah, that's exactly what we saw. I mean, we couldn't see a lot of it, but yeah, he went down. I mean, he stayed down, and when they send like the stretcher over for people, that's never good. And then he actually, because of the way the stadium was configured, like he came out, they took him out sort of through our section, through where we were, and that's where you would think if, like we were chanting his name and stuff, you would expect like a thumbs up or whatever, and he was just like in such clear agony that like he just didn't even react, and that's when you're like, okay, this is a very serious thing that he can't, he didn't like respond or acknowledge anything, but he was just down and out. And so we don't have an update yet. Again, expect that. I think Josh's press conference is on Tuesday. We might get some kind of update then, but I really feel like that's a long-term injury that we'll have to deal with.
Yeah. So Jean Kolmanich ends up coming in at left back to replace him. And so once Kolmanich comes in, I don't know if these two things were necessarily related, but something that we'll come back to later in the game is Cecilio had been staying kind of wide, and Sweat would overlap sometimes, and Cecilio was kind of staying on the wing, or at least pretty high. And something he starts doing at this point is he starts moving inside a little bit and kind of dropping in between lines into the midfield. And Kolmanich would push higher and wide up the field and was doing like overlapping a bit more aggressively on that left wing. And it almost immediately started leading to some dangerous moments for Austin on that side. So we'll like I said, we'll talk about this more, but that little shift ends up being kind of what breaks the game open later in the game. And so I think it's really encouraging and really cool to see Josh Wolff making these tactical shifts in the middle of a game after 20 minutes, having seen just a little bit of what we were struggling with, making this little change. And in the second half, it ends up being what changes the game. So
one thing I want to point out on the right that it seemed like in the stadium, and I don't know if it was like that watching the video, is, man, Romagna was heavy on the ball to Lima. It was like he started to attack him with it. You know, I think there was one point like where he fired the ball like at Lima's face, and he kind of went out of bounds, and Lima just like stopped and like held his hands out. I'm like, what are you trying to do? Like, we're on the same team. And I think that was a part of the problem in the play, though. I think on the right side, like in the first half, is that was they were not fluid and they weren't making connections, and some of it was just, I mean, Romagna had a really good game, but you know, he's not. I don't think he's quite there yet in terms of being able to like create on offense.
Yeah, I thought, yeah, we'll kind of give little reviews of each player a little later on, but I thought he did end up having a pretty good game, Romagna. But one of Colorado's kind of main plans was to overload the midfield. They had that line of 4 in the midfield to Austin's 3 in the midfield, and really just kind of overloaded it defensively. Wanted to get the ball and then counter and break really quickly. And I mean, partly to take advantage of Austin's high line, but also one of our center backs, regardless of who it is, isn't going to be the fastest. So if it's Besler or if it's Cascante, it's not going to be the fastest center back in the world. So they had quite a few pretty dangerous chances playing long balls to Michael Barrios on that right wing. Barrios is super fast, really dribbly guy. He's not always the best finisher, but he's always dangerous. But there were several chances early on, and Cascante in the back line dealt with it more times than not. That only goal, which we'll come to, didn't come from a moment like that. So I thought they looked pretty good dealing with kind of Colorado's main game plan, which is that fast counter attack up the wing. And yeah, I think if maybe Colorado had been a little more clinical, there could have been more than just the one goal in the first half. So speaking of goals, we can come to their first goal. So Colorado is generally pretty dangerous on set pieces. Jack Price is their corner taker and their set piece taker for the most part. And I think he got, I don't know how many assists last season just off of set pieces and how many goals they got from set pieces. And that's exactly what happened in the 37th minute. Jack Price takes the corner. He plays it high and it kind of about the edge of the 6-yard box, right in the center of the box there. It's in Austin's playing kind of like a zone coverage on corners. There's a player in front of Romagna, and so he kind of takes a step forward and then realizes the ball is actually going over his head to Shinashiki. Shinashiki jumps really well, and because Romagna had kind of taken that step forward, he has the jump backwards and gets beat in the air. And I think he just kind of got caught in two minds there, which led to the goal, and hopefully learn from that and do better. But what was the mood like in the stadium at that point, Jeremiah, after that first goal?
Not great. I mean, that's a technical definition. No, I think, I just like it was a different experience between like watching it in the stadium and going back and watching it. I think a lot of us just felt like we hadn't connected a lot of play. Like we seemed kind of lost. We didn't see a lot of forward momentum. So to have that happen and then to see that goal, which happened in our end, and awesome. What's amazing is like all 4 goals happened on our end when we get to the happy ending of this. But to see that, I think folks were fairly deflated from that because there weren't a ton of opportunities we created. There was the LA game last week, and so we were a bit down. Luckily, Lamurga never stopped like singing and being loud, but
Yeah.
But generally, you know, I think there was a little bit of a despair at that point in time.
Yeah, I mean, I was curious to see how you guys felt because I'm just kind of an optimist in general, and so I hadn't gotten down yet. I think that we had seen enough possession already and had created a few chances that I wasn't like I thought that we could still do it, and there's still a decent chance that we could come back, but I was very nervous at that point for sure. In the 47th, so yeah, that's halftime. That takes us to halftime. I think Josh Wolff must have given an amazing speech at halftime because coming out, they looked like a different team. They ended up looking a little shaky right off the bat for a few minutes, but then after that started looking really good. And Cecilio Dominguez also didn't have a very good first half. I thought he looked pretty poor in the first half, actually. And he came out and was rocking in the second half. So in the 47th minute, right after halftime, Pereira takes the ball off of Price around midfield and starts dribbling away. Price comes back and just two-footed tackles him.
Oh, that was such an ugly tackle. Yeah.
Hard. Yeah, it was bad. That was this. He got a yellow for it. It very well could have been a red. It was like right on the borderline. I know you watched the game back. Did you think that should have been a red?
I felt like watching the video, the second time, and I felt like more like it should have been red than seeing it in person. You know, being able to see the recording. Yeah. Definitely,
I think the 2 feet, and then also it was clearly retaliation for Pereira taking the ball off of him. He just went and like, I'm going to go destroy this kid now. And yeah, he took him out. So I thought it was right on the borderline there, but he got a yellow card earlier in the game. It was Shinashiki got a yellow card in the 40th minute for pulling down Pereira on a breakaway. And so they were just like going to town on poor little Danny Pereira.
But he never let it show, man. He was so composed and so good.
Yeah, he really was.
And he is the owner of our first yellow card, which we'll get to in a moment. But
all 3 yellow cards involved Danny Pereira. So I mentioned Cecilio Dominguez not looking great in the first half. In the 49th minute, Cecilio gets the ball out on the left wing and gets fouled. And it's probably about 3 yards outside of the 18-yard box and about 8 yards off the end line. So it's a really tight angle. But it's close to goal, but a really tight angle. And so I don't know, did you think he was even thinking about shooting or
no.
Yeah, it was a crossing scenario or like maybe playing it to the top of the box for a shot or something like that. But he ends up just ripping a shot high and near to the near post, and it smashes off the crossbar and goes down. I think Cascante ends up trying to hit it, but he's off balance and kind of caught him off guard, and he ends up playing it out for a goal kick. But that would have been amazing if he'd have been able to score that free kick.
Yeah, that was, oh man, it was such a shot. And I feel like from watching the other players, nobody was expecting that, right? Like people were running at the goal like they were expecting a cross, not like they were thinking it was going to be a shot that they needed to react to.
Yeah, and Austin has done a few like kind of choreographed set plays in both of these games. And so Fagundez was out there with him, and Fagundez runs over the ball and kind of starts running towards the penalty spot. And so I think that little bit of distraction was like, okay, they're gonna try something here. And then Cecilio just rips it and catches everyone off guard. But the keeper had no chance. He was not going to stop that. If it would have been a few inches lower, that's the first goal right there. And that would have been an amazing first goal. But yeah, after this point, things start to look different. Austin really starts. They had some difficulty playing through the midfield in the first half, but after that moment, Austin really kind of starts carving through their midfield. And it was that movement I discussed earlier with Cecilio not staying wide and kind of moving into kind of that half space in between lines and moving inside a little bit. And that little move started so many dangerous moves. And I think it started when Kolmanich came on, but I think probably at halftime, Wolff told him, like, do this and do it hard. Like, this is the move now.
Yeah, and that's
and
what
ended
Josh
up-
said. I think in the post-game press conference, he talked about at halftime they mentioned structural things and getting better at positional play. And that's what he said was that most of it was driven by Cecilio, that it came down to like this coordination and creating space and creating angles. And Cecilio just kind of took the game over, which was good to see because I think we knew he had it in him, and it was good to see him make this game his own. He was amazing.
Yeah, so in the 59th minute, Cecilio is dribbling laterally, kind of just past midfield, and trying to find a hole to cut in or a pass. Jack Price puts in a tackle and the ball kind of pops straight up, but Cecilio is able to get to it and heads it down to Pereira. Pereira starts driving forward. There's two guys right there and neither of them step to him. And he just like, all right, see ya. And just slips right in between them and drives forward. There's a defender there and he just keeps driving straight at that defender and is going to make that defender commit to him. Once that defender steps, Stroud is running up the right edge of the box. And so he plays Stroud out to the right, who pushes it to the inline, and he just rips in about a waist-high cross, just right across the goal line there. And Hussein is running to the near post and kind of holds up because if he keeps running, he's just going to run out of bounds. And so he holds up. Keegan Rosenberry ends up kind of running past him and getting in front of him and jumps to try to block it. And the ball bounces off of his butt and goes straight down into the ground and then bounces over to the far post to Fagundez, who's following up that run and just runs up and easily slots it in at the back sides. So that was Austin FC's first ever goal, which was really amazing. But I think the kind of the build up to that play was really encouraging. And then also just the kind of the game plan that led to that. So Stroud puts it into that dangerous position and Fagundez is the one that it falls to. But if you watch the replay back, Cecilio and Pereira are running down the middle of the box. And so Stroud could have put it in several different places, or that ball could have bounced to several different places. And there would have been someone there to put a shot on goal. I think Fagundez was the highest percentage one to fall to just because he was so close and the keeper was on the other side. But there was a high chance of wherever that ball fell that a shot was going to get off for sure, which I think is just going to be part of Austin's game plan, is get the ball into dangerous positions and get numbers in that box to try to get something into the goal, which is exactly what happened in this one. It wasn't the prettiest goal, but it also wasn't a fluke. It happened because of how well worked that play was by Austin. How, like, again, what was the reaction in the stands there?
It was insane in the corner. Yeah, it was great. And then, he ran over and Cecilio ran over and like he threw up the LV hands and his commitment to, I don't know if you saw the tweet after the game. My favorite part was he said like, yeah, I beat a bunch of Los Verdes people at foot golf. And I agreed that I would like make this hand sign if I scored the first goal. I think he committed to like making the hand sign if he scored the first goal. But
I remembered them saying that in Slack, that he told us he would throw up the LV if he scored a goal. And I was like, all right, we'll see if he remembers that. And he did. First goal in Austin FC history, his first goal for the team. He threw it up right there. Yeah. Boom.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And I love that he made sure to point out that he beat them at foot golf. On the because like he should, man. You're a professional soccer player. Like you should win at foot golf over a bunch of guys. But no, it was really cool, and it was good to see like him and Cecilio. And then by that time, they were running the subs kind of on the back line. Like Berhalter was over there, Gallagher was over there, so they kind of had this big like 7-person celebration with the people who were warming up to come in. Yeah,
that was awesome. Not long after that, they make the first subs. So it's the 67th minute. Gallagher comes on for Hussein, and Redis comes on for Stroud. Immediately after the subs come on, it's like the first play that they're involved in. Colorado are restarting the play with a free kick from inside the 18-yard box. I think it had been offside call or something. And so they play it short to one of the center backs and they're just going to try to play it on the ground out of the back. Austin starts pressing them, puts them under pressure. Fagundez kind of traps Cole Bassett on the sideline and just takes the ball from him, just kind of bullies it away from him. It's like, this is mine now. And turns around, runs, who was it? Yeah, dribbles directly at Price and kind of makes him commit. And then plays the ball to his left towards the goal to Gallagher, who's running there. Gallagher runs straight at the center back Danny Wilson, and kind of like tries to dribble around him, but Wilson puts in a tackle and pokes it away just right at the right moment. Cecilio, it only rolls a few feet, but Cecilio ends up getting there before Wilson's able to recover, and plays a low curler into the far corner. And it was a really nice finish for that second goal. That one, I think that's probably like the nicest goal of the night for sure.
Yeah, that was a really good shot from him. And that in that moment, we were down like with the Murga, and like Kirk Mangum was crying from excitement about being there. And it was like the most emotional and exciting moment maybe of my life would be there with him and like see us, because like we had just seen the first goal and now we took like our first lead ever, you know, and for that to come from Cecilio was so awesome.
Yeah, I definitely like jumped up and screamed in my living room. My family came to town. It was our first fully vaccinated gathering, and so we were actually like just hanging out in a living room, and it was very nice. But yeah, I probably scared them all whenever that goal went in, because I jumped up and started clapping and yelling, and yeah, it was very exciting. But that was a nice finish. And one thing I realized that I saw when watching the replay is they showed like kind of a slow motion close up of William Yarbrough, their goalkeeper. And I was like, did he just yell "what the heck" at his defense? And so I looked up his Wikipedia page, and he was born in Mexico to missionary parents and is a devout Christian. And so I think he really did, like, he looked really angry, yeah. And he said, "what the heck?" So that's a fun fact about William Yarbrough, is even in the worst of moments, he will not use foul language even when he's angry.
Yeah, and I remember him. He had a brief spot with the national team, I think.
Yeah, when he was young, I think he played a lot with the youth teams and tournaments, and people kind of thought he was going to be one of the guys who might compete for a spot on the first, like the full national team. And I don't think that ever really panned out. But yeah, people were pretty excited about him when he was younger. All right, so Austin's up 2-1 in the 71st minute, just 11 minutes after the first goal. Austin's third goal comes, and it comes from that same pattern that we're talking about. Cecilio dropping in between lines, and Cascante plays it in hard to Cecilio. He just gets to it. There's a defender right on his back, and he kind of goes up in the air and just gets a foot to it and flicks it out to the left sideline to an onrushing Kolmanich. He pushes forward into space. There's nobody in the box. He kind of got out ahead of his front line there. So there's nobody in the box. And so he plays a low, hard ball just kind of straight across the top of the box, where Redes is kind of running across the top of the box there. Redes settles it with his foot and kind of one touches it back over to Cecilio. Cecilio hits it first time, and he looks like he's aiming at the far post, but it ends up deflecting off of Danny Wilson's leg and just bounces in at the near post, because almost exactly the same thing is what happened to Stuver against LAFC whenever a ball bounced off Lima's leg. Once it caught that deflection, there was no chance. It was just going to go in. So same thing happened there. Again, I think the finish was a little bit lucky there, just the way it deflected, but there was nothing lucky about the buildup. And so I think overall it's a very well-earned goal. Again, even if that one, like I said, the deflection was a little bit lucky, but the buildup was really, really good and well-earned, I thought.
Yeah, there's that like old sports saying about how you create your own luck, and I feel like there was a lot of that there. Like there's enough creative play and just numbers in the box that it was bound to happen, and maybe those goals weren't going to happen in those exact situations, and those were a little bit of luck, but they were. I feel like they were going to come no matter what, just with the way they were playing in the second half. You know, maybe they were Stroud and Gallagher or whatever, but they were really, really good and really clear and really following Josh's plan for how to attack in the second half.
Yeah, for sure. So at this point, we feel like it's our game, right? Colorado ends up with a few other kind of dangerous chances throughout the game. In the 80th minute, Jonathan Lewis gets it outside of the box and rips a shot in. And Stuver makes a really good one-handed save, and that's in the 80th minute. In the 85th minute, Mane comes on for Cecilio and Berhalter comes on for Fagundez. There's not a ton of action after that. There's a few chances both ways. Oh, there's one moment in the 76th minute, to go back a little bit. John Gallagher gets an open header in the middle of the box and just kind of whiffs it and doesn't catch it cleanly. It bounces off his shoulder and just kind of trickles away. But he should have scored that one. There was nobody touching him when he got there. So that it could have been 4-1 there. And there was a few other shots as well that it could have been worse than it was, for sure. And yeah, after, like I said, those subs come on, Austin's pretty happy to just kind of play the ball around at the back and kill off the game. And Austin ends up with their first ever victory, or as Adrian Healy put it on the broadcast, he said, Austin have gate crashed the party and spilled Verde wine all over the carpet.
I love it. I didn't pick up on that one, but it's perfect. I guess we probably don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but man, Healy and Lahoud are so good. And we talked about that before, but when I went back and watched it, it's like they just like the chemistry. I mean, it seems like they've been doing this together for years. And, Adrian's a super pro, but like Michael Lahoud as an analyst is a revelation given like how much experience he has, I thought.
And that's, mind you, that's the local broadcast. That was going out on Antenna and on the Austin FC website. Like, that's the level of our local broadcast. If you've watched some of these regional broadcasts on ESPN Plus, you'll know that this is a luxury. And we knew Healy was going to be good, but like you said, Lahoud, for having not done this very much, he's very good and slotted in really well right next to Healy there. So yeah, count your blessings with that one, Austin fans. We won big. So, all right, let's maybe just go through and talk about players we thought stood out. Are there any particular players that you want to mention first?
Yeah, when I started this, I had like 11 or 12 players on the list because like everybody did so good.
I have notes for all of them, so okay, if you want to talk about any of them. No.
I mean, I'll just pick a couple. I mean, I think like Cecilio's obvious. I think Pereira's obvious. I think we've talked about Culminage. We may want to expand on that. I thought Cascante, like given my very low expectations for him, is probably the person that most outperformed it. And he did it in a Besler kind of way. Like he knew that he was not the fastest guy in the world. He was just like, he made good decisions. He was always positionally accurate. Like he didn't make mistakes. Like he was just like, he played smart and he played within himself and he knew when to take opportunities and like when to sit back, and just, he played a pretty like clinical kind of match. So I was really, really excited about the way he played. Yeah,
totally agree. Some of those long balls, it would make you nervous, right? With Barrios running in there and Cascante had a full sprint back towards the goal, but he did it right every time. Like he never messed any of those up. Barrios never got any dangerous chances from those moments. And so, again, like you said, like Besler did against LAFC, didn't, and like kind of like he's done for the last several years of his career, not the fastest, not the most athletic, but he's going to put that foot in the right spot at the right time and it's going to work out. And then he also made a few kind of smart tactical fouls, which after the Houston preseason game, when he got burned by Pico on that breakaway, when he could have done a tactical foul, I've seen him do a few in preseason and in the game against Colorado, when something could have turned into something and he just sticks a leg out or grabs a guy's shirt or something and just takes the foul there, which is the smart thing to do in a lot of situations. So that was really encouraging as well. On the ball, again, Besler, like he was breaking lines with the passes, and he actually played the ball to Cecilio on the first goal and on the third goal, kind of the ball line breaking pass that started the whole movement. He played both of those balls to start both of those moves. So really great performance from Cascante. Who else stood out to you?
Well, I would like to know kind of do you have anybody else that was the same way? Like, do you have anybody that you weren't expecting that much of that you really got a lot out of?
Diego Fagundez, I was really happy with how he played. And it wasn't necessarily, I'm not necessarily surprised that he played well. I'm surprised at some of the specific things that he did really well, which was his defending. He was really good in the press, really aggressive, but smart. Like he wasn't just running people over. he was being pretty crafty with the way he was being aggressive. And then in transition, there were several moments where there would be someone running down the wing, but then another midfielder kind of cutting in to the inside. And he and Lima and he and Romano were like talking to each other and just communicating really well. It's like, okay, you take this guy, I'm going to step here. And it went off flawlessly. Anytime the ball came down that side and there was kind of some type of tricky scenario, they seemed to get through it really smoothly every time because they were communicating really well. So, yeah, really smart play. As far as like the things that I expected him to do coming into this team were like playmaking things. And he didn't do a ton of that. It was mostly just being like a connective player in that area and then being there when he needed to be and then being a team player while defending. And he just was really solid all the way around.
Yeah, I did notice that too in the first half. I remember when things, you know, we didn't feel like we were that aggressive, but he did a really good job of like going back and doing the work that, you know, we had heard that he didn't love to do, right? That we thought that was going to be like the reason for his fallout in New England, but he was committed to it, so that was good. So let's talk about Kolmanich. How'd you feel about that?
I thought he was fantastic. I thought he was so good. I know during the LA game, he came on for a bit at the end, and people were kind of excited about him. I think I heard a few people saying that, oh, he should start over Sweat immediately. He's that good. And I was really kind of concerned about how his defending would look over the span of an entire game. And so, yeah, I just wasn't exactly sure what he would look like, but he ended up holding his own against Barrios on that right side, cut out a few passes just from having good position, looked good pressing the ball. And then, yeah, going with Barrios kind of rushing at him on that right wing, he held his own and defended really well. So I thought he was fantastic. It's sad to see Ben Sweat get injured, but to know that we have this kind of guy waiting in the wings to come on, that's very encouraging.
Yeah, and we'll have to get into like what this means. I think the depth is going to be a question, but like you, I was like we knew he was a crossing machine, right? He did that. Like I think at one point I asked Wellhausen, like, does this guy do anything but fire in crosses? But he held up on his own defensively, which I was a little bit positively surprised by too, for sure. And then, you know, Josh Wolff had a lot of compliments for Stroud too, which I believe the actual quote was "Stroud's awesome." Is what he said in the post-game press conference. So, you know, I think the energy and intensity, you know, and I think the way he stretches the field is really good. So it was good to see him do that. And I think he and Ronnie are good compliments to each other too, to have like somebody on the right side running all the time for 90 minutes.
Yeah, to have two guys who can play kind of similarly like that and just wear teams down. I was really impressed with Stroud. Just work rate, chasing down loose balls, getting into dangerous positions, putting in crosses. Yeah, he looked really good. One other thing you kind of alluded to this earlier, but Danny Pereira, he just put in like a real like workman's performance, played full 90 minutes. Colorado, like I said, was kind of packing the midfield, and so they made it difficult for him to get on the ball sometimes. And then also all those fouls against him, when he did get on the ball, he would just get thrown to the ground several times. And so I think he could have very easily gotten just really frustrated, but he kept his cool. Diego Rubio went after him a few times too, and like knocked him down, was pushing him and kind of talking trash. He could have lost his cool and gotten frustrated, but stayed really cool, facilitated when he was able to, but outside of that, just did a lot of dirty work, kind of played defense, was really important in the press, and looked really awesome. Put in a really great, just kind of team player performance there. Like you said, we could gush about all of the players. I don't think there's anybody who had a bad game. Like I said, Cecilio looked a little rough in the first half, but more than made up for that in the second half. Overall, a really solid team performance. As far as overall impressions, I think we can see the possession game and the style is there. We just needed that first goal to kind of tip it over the edge. We got that. That first goal happened. The press looked really good. We saw some really great aggression from the players in that press. And we also saw kind of our depth shine in this game. we were missing 3 starters that 2 for sure that we were expecting to be there and needed to be there, and then possibly a third in Redes. All 3 guys who stepped in those spots did great and were really important in this game. So that's another really encouraging thing to see in this game. So we'll get into previewing the next game against Minnesota, but I think most people are pretty high on our performance so far.
Yeah, it would be hard to find to downside, and I mean, I'm kind of a Danny Houston critic, but even like he was doing what he was being asked to do in the first half, right? I mean, he was playing back a lot. He was playing in the midfield a lot, which is what we needed. So I mean, he wasn't great, in connection and in offense, but he was doing what was expected of him. So like even that performance wasn't awful.
I think for the most part, there's one thing that he's not doing that really frustrates me, and it's when there's a lot of space towards the near post, like the ball's coming up a wing and there's space at the near post. He never makes that run. And there was times, one time specifically, when Kolmanich had just come on, puts in a really dangerous cross, that if he had made that near post run, Stroud was already going to the back post. And so he essentially crowded Stroud out at that back post, and there was nobody on the other side of the field. And so if he makes that near post run and Stroud goes to the far post, then there's 2 options there for Kolmanich to aim at. But it's just like he's like afraid of the near post. He will not make that run and never does it. And I think that's one thing that I can't imagine Wolff is telling him not to run to the near post, because Gallagher does it every time he's on the field. So again, yeah, I think there are some things that, like you said, he's being told to do and doing things that are expected of him. But I also don't think he's doing any of those things well enough to be untouchable at this point, and wouldn't be surprised if Stroud ends up starting over, or sorry, Gallagher ends up starting over him at some point. All right, so should we take a break and then come back and talk to Eric Goodman?
Let's do that.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Eric Goodman of the Austin Chronicle. Moonshiner Soccer is once again brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community transparency and client education. And we've talked a lot about how they're a different kind of law firm, and they seem to be great people. And so I can extend this beyond just the partners at FVF Law, but also to Zach Fogelman, brother of Josh Fogelman, who I'd spent a lot of time with in Denver this weekend. Zach's a lovely person, loves his brother, loves his family, loves his kids. And so, the FVF family is a great family all the way around. So again, if you're looking for somebody to work with, check out FVF Law.
Yeah, so you can find out more about the Fogelman family and more about FVF Law at fvf.law. Once again, that's fvf.law. Well, you don't need words to tell me things that drive me wild, right out of my brain. All right, we are joined today by Eric Goodman, who is a soccer columnist for the Austin Chronicle covering Austin FC. Eric, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Absolutely. Happy to be joining. Just got off my flight from Denver. What a weekend. I hope we can avoid any audio announcements, but yeah, great to be talking to you guys. Yeah,
Eric's actually in the airport, just stepped off of a plane, and so he's a trooper for joining us today. So we really appreciate it. Eric, so to start off with, just tell us a little bit about how you started writing about soccer and then started writing about soccer for the Chronicle.
So the way this got started for me, I was super lucky. Kevin Robbins, one of my, a good friend and a former professor of mine at the journalism school at UT, he maintains a Facebook group for alumni. So yeah, my old professor, Kevin Robbins, he caught wind of an opportunity that the Austin Chronicle was looking for. They're an alt weekly paper. And, if you're in Austin, you might've seen it, stacks of it in coffee shops and cafes. And it's, it's a pretty fundamental part of Austin alt culture. And they've never covered sports before. They haven't dabbled into UT coverage. They kind of left that to the statesmen and traditional media. But Austin FC, they felt like it was something that they wanted to include in their coverage. And so I saw the post that my old professor, Kevin Robbins, put in the Facebook group. It was like send an email. And it was one of the most difficult assignments or trial assignments I've ever done, because it was talk about the 3 best and 3 worst players in MLS in 100 total words. So do the math on how many words that is per bullet point. I think it's like 13 to 16 words per bullet point, which is not a skill that I've really had to implement in my coverage, but it was a fun challenge. And the first real trial assignment, because clearly, the editors there, which include Nick Barbaro, who's the publisher and is someone who's been kind of an Austin soccer prophet for going on 30 years, like one of the first people to really cover soccer, especially in Austin on a weekly basis. So my first assignment for them was to cover the expansion draft and just do a write-up, do a recap on what that was like. And that kind of got it started. And I started, as player acquisition started coming in, I would do news recaps, and eventually it just became, I was their guy for Austin FC. And I've tried to maintain that as best I can, to the point where I was fortunate where they gave me a weekly column, kind of replacing one that Nick Barbaro had been writing. And we called it the Verde Report. And it's kind of like the mainstay every week inside the print issue. I'm adding online only articles, but that's really like the core of our coverage is that article, same spot every week in the Austin Chronicle.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because I think the first time we talked, was like in January, and we were talking about the development of the fan scene, and it was all theoretical at that point in time, right? Because we were in the middle of a pandemic and we had no games and whatever. And so now you spent a weekend in Denver with Austin FC fans. Like, what did you expect out of this weekend? And then, how did it turn out for you?
Well, I think I was like a lot of people, and I saw you tweeting about it at the time too, Jeremiah, when the first 2 road games came out, because before they released the rest of the schedule, it was number 1 at LAFC, number 2 at Denver. And I think we all looked at that, just, being aware of the situation in Southern California, that the first one, and props to those who did make the trip, but for me, it did not seem tenable. And so, and then seeing Los Verdes kind of put together this Den Verde, first of all, the name, and then I kind of see this momentum build. I did kind of have an expectation that it was going to be something special this weekend. I didn't know how special or what exactly it was going to look like. But it did not disappoint. And from the start, I was sad to have missed the Friday night festivities, but from the start of the day around lunchtime Saturday. So from the start of the day at the Capitol, I linked up with the Los Verdes crowd of I think we counted like about 200 people that were assembled. And from then all the way through till the start of the match, and then obviously when things really picked up for Austin FC in that second half, and then through the end of the game, just an incredibly special night to witness, and in my case to document. And it's a memory that going forward, hopefully, if I'm keep doing this for an extended period of time, and for anyone who was a part of it, I think that's kind of going to feel like a true kickoff point for this whole story that we're kind of all part of.
So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be an important memory for me, and I wasn't even there. Just like seeing it on TV was really cool. And then one of my favorite videos that came out of this was actually one that you took from the press box, kind of that overhead view of the fans jumping up and down and singing and chanting and playing the drums together. I think if there's a lot of MLS clubs, if you would have shown them that and said, like, told them that this was the home support, they would have been like, oh yeah, that's amazing home support, really really solid group there. But the fact that that was an away game, and that's all you could hear on the uh, the broadcast was the Austin fans singing and chanting. I thought that was fantastic. So yeah, that's really awesome that both of you guys got to be there.
So what is your, like, have you had a lot of MLS experience? Have you seen a lot of matches? Like how was that comparative? Maybe what you've seen.
Sure. So, I haven't seen a huge amount, but I actually have been fortunate to be part of, and I know the Colorado game was not Austin FC's very first game, but it kind of felt, it felt like there was obviously a lot of firsts involved. And I was also fortunate way back in 2015 to be in the Citrus Bowl for Orlando City's first ever match. And that was a home match for them. They filled at 60,000 strong. And that was, an unbelievable thing to be a part of as well. And what was interesting about that game in Orlando was not only was it Orlando City's first ever game, it was also New York City FC's first game. So maybe that's kind of a relevant comparison. I don't remember a boisterous NYCFC presence. Now, they didn't have to wait as long for their debut game. I think they were going to have it the next week, whereas Austin, we've got a much longer wait. But I've never seen any kind of away support like that. Even though, the numbers, I think Austin will have better numbers, especially in the inter-Texas rivalry, might get more there. But the people who did go, the commitment was just off the charts, and it wasn't just within the 90 minutes. It was really from the moment that people touched down in Denver, from what it seemed like to me.
So, Eric, like generally, you've covered this for a while. Like, what are your impressions of the team to date, and what do you think we can expect going forward?
I mean, you can't. The impressions of the team are pretty positive so far. From I mean, that first match in LAFC could have been a disaster. Not a disaster. It could have been worse than it was by far. I think Austin acquitted itself pretty well that first half. Kind of a reverse of the story of this game this past week in Colorado, when Austin came out very flat, or at least developed into a pretty flat run of play where they hardly created anything in that first half, kind of the opposite of what we saw in Los Angeles. But then to have two halves, one in each game, where Austin was by far the best team on the field, especially that second half in Denver, I think shows kind of that this team is not going to. It shows that Austin FC is kind of following into the category of expansion teams that are building momentum at a very early stage. And there isn't too much of a middle ground in recent MLS history for expansion teams. You're usually either immediately competitive or pretty much a doormat. And so far, it would appear like Austin's going to fall into that first category.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope you're right. We're very excited about it, and we look forward to reading your coverage of it some more. So before we wrap up, tell our listeners where they can find your work. Yeah,
listeners can find my work inside the Austin Chronicle. Again, it's free to read anywhere you can find it, and also austinchronicle.com. We've got a little tab for Austin FC now on the homepage, and that's going to have. It's not just me. We've got a lot of food and drink writers covering the bar scene where Austin FC games are going to be shown, which is really fun. But yeah, that's where the brunt of my coverage is going to be.
Yeah, and so where can people find you on Twitter? Because I think Landon was very impressed with your Twitter handle earlier today when we connected.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Goodman.
What a get, man! At Goodman.
There's a bit of an Austin related story to that. If you guys want the 1 minute short version.
Yeah, we'd love it.
So, I had some free time on Twitter a couple years ago, and it was just searching handles that would apply to me, just to see what was available. I don't know what my handle at the time was, but it was something, not notable. And I saw at Goodman belonged to a Cedar Park resident named Goodman Holiday. And I don't know if Goodman is a fan of Austin FC or if he listens, but first person I've seen with Goodman as the first name. And I DM'd him, just said, hey, I don't know how married you are to this handle, but I'd be happy to, give you $20 for it if you'll sign it over to me. And he hit back, I'll do it for 30. Deal. Send it
awesome.
over. And yeah,
That's
so now I have to live up to it, and hopefully
and make Goodman Holiday proud.
And hopefully this past weekend kind of kicked that off in a big way. I appreciate everyone who enjoyed the videos I was sending.
Oh, well, awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that story with us. And I also want to find out, I'm not going to make you say this on air, but I also want to find out who you said were the 3 worst players in MLS. I'll ask you that off air, though. But yeah, Eric, thanks so much for joining us, man. This has been really great, and we look forward to reading more of your work.
Thanks, guys. It's been a blast.
All right, safe travels, man.
When no one is around.
All right, we want to thank Eric one more time for joining us. Jeremiah, let's jump into previewing the Minnesota United game. So, real quick, give us what their results were in the 2020 season.
Yeah, so in 2020, in the MLS's back tournament, they finished second in their group. They made a good run in the playoffs. They defeated Columbus and San Jose before losing to Orlando 3-1 in the semifinals in that tournament. They finished fourth in the regular season. And defeated our good friends in Colorado in the first round of the playoffs, I believe, because I think Colorado was fifth. Again, made a good run, and they had a dramatic loss to Seattle in the Western Conference Finals. I don't remember the specifics, but I think they were up 2-0, 70 minutes in, I think, and then Seattle scored 3 to make it to the finals against Columbus.
Yeah, I think that's right. But yeah, looked really good at the end of last season. So far this season, they haven't looked so good, but we can get into that a little bit more. But as far as changes in the offseason, I think the biggest loss was Kevin Molino. He ended up going to Columbus after his contract expired. So that's a big loss there. As far as players in, they brought in Will Trapp in the midfield, kind of Ozzy Alonso is getting a little bit older, and so he's not going to be able to play every minute like he has in the past. So that's kind of a backup in one of those positions. Another big name they brought in recently is Ramon Avila, who goes by the amazing nickname of Wanchope. That's a season-long loan from Boca, and he is a TAM player. He's a kind of a out-and-out number 9. He's a former teammate of Reynoso at Boca Juniors. He's only played 25 minutes so far this season, so I'm not sure if he's still just working up to fitness from not having played for a while. But we're not sure if he'll start against us or not. They also last week announced the signing of Adrian Hunu, I think is how you say it, as their next designated player. But since that was just announced on Friday, I would guess that he's almost certainly not going to be available for the game against us this week. As far as what to expect for them, Reynoso is the guy, right? He's their main threat, and maybe their only threat if Wanchope isn't entirely fit yet.
Yeah, and he's a lot of people had him pegged as an MVP candidate going into the season. So he's kind of the what the whole club works through. Interestingly, I was Will Trapp, I'd forgotten that he was in Minnesota. And in December, we had a show where we speculated on how much fun it would be for Austin to sign Will Trapp, favorite son of Columbus. Yeah. So it's interesting to see him in Minnesota. I don't know how much he's actually played this year yet, because I watched the Seattle game, which they did not do great in, but yeah, I
think he's played a fair amount so far. I know he started in at least one of the games, if not both of them.
So they entered the season with high expectations based upon their performance in the playoffs last year, the development of Reynoso, and they have not necessarily lived up to that. So do you want to talk a little bit more about what to expect out of them, or should we get into the 2021 results?
I think we can start with their 2021 results so far. they've not been very good so far. I don't think that necessarily means that they're going to be bad this season. They have even though they lost Molino, this is still a very talented team. And with those two new additions that I mentioned before, they're going to be like, they have a lot of talent on the team. So maybe they're not going to reach the heights that they reached at the end of last season, but I think they're still going to be very good. Jan Gregush is a fantastic midfielder. They've got Will Trapp and Ozzy Alonso. Robin Lod has been very good for them. And then right now, it looks like Juan Agudelo and Robin Lod are kind of their only options at the 9 if Wanchope doesn't play. Lod is not really a number 9, but he played there a lot for them last season and did a pretty good job. So I'd say if that's maybe their one weakness right now is not having a real number 9 until Wanchope is ready to go. But if hopefully we catch them still on their poor run of form and are able to kind of walk through them like RSL and Seattle have done so far. But if they start clicking and look even anything like they did at the end of last season, we could have some trouble with them. They have enough talent to do that if they're on the right night.
Yeah, I want to go to their second game. So, I mean, I think, Seattle's good. Everybody expected that. I don't know if a lot of people expected a lot out of RSL, but I did love the Adrian Heath commentary about the RSL goalkeeper. And so the controversy comes. His name's Ochoa. What's his first name?
David Ochoa.
David Ochoa. When the final whistle blew, to give RSL the final full 3 points. Also, a 20-year-old goalkeeper turned around facing goal and kicked the ball into the Minnesota supporters section, which sort of created a mess out of that. And Adrian, he said he got some edge to him for a kid that's not that good, which seems like a controversial thing to say when you just lost. I mean, what do you think about that?
I thought that was brilliant. I loved that because I think he's right. David Ochoa is like a young, promising keeper, but I don't know. It's the kind of thing that if you're going to do stuff like that, you need to be able to kind of back it up a little bit more than Ochoa is capable of at this moment in time. I'm not mad at anybody for any of this because it's extremely entertaining.
It's great. It's beautiful MLS like content for sure.
Nobody got hurt. It's petty and like disrespectful probably, but like he didn't hurt anybody. He didn't cheat during the game, so I don't care. Keep doing stuff like this. It's fun to watch.
And so we've got that to look forward to this season. I mean, they're at the bottom of the table in the Western Conference, so I do worry a little bit about the fact that they're just going to have a chip on their shoulder and not want to lose the first three. So I would expect it to be a really tough match on the road.
I should know this since I'm going to be at the game, but do you happen to know what percentage capacity they're letting into the stadium right now?
I do not. I think it's really low. I went there like 2 years ago. It's a great stadium, and it's a good experience. So hopefully you'll get some of it from being there. Yeah.
Like you said, hopefully we get the weekend version of Minnesota United. Any other thoughts on Minnesota before we move on to roster updates for Austin FC?
No, I'm just looking forward to it again, and I'm planning on being out at Hop Squad for that, because that's the Los Verdes Watch Party location. We had a good crowd last week, even with a bunch of people on the road. I think it'll be a great party on Saturday also.
Yeah, so check out Hop Squad. Check out there's going to be lots of watch parties again, which will probably be the case for the rest of the season. So find your local bar that's going to have the game on and go check it out. All right, let's jump into some roster updates for Austin FC. So later this week, there's going to be press conferences with Jean Kolmanich and Diego Fagundez. So those should be pretty fun. For Jean, just kind of getting to know him a little bit. He does speak English, which is good because I imagine Austin FC doesn't have a Slovenian translator on staff. But I think it'll be nice to just get to see what his personality's like. And then Diego is going to be fun anyway, just because he seems like a really fun guy. But the fact that he scored the first goal in Austin FC history, that should be a fun one. So we'll have those updates for you next week on the show. And the latest news, which happened, we're recording Monday night, this just came out earlier today, is that Austin FC announced that they had acquired 22-year-old midfielder Emmanuel Manny Perez on loan from the Portland Timbers for the 2021 MLS season. And they traded for that Austin FC's 2023 third round super draft pick. And they have the option to trade for the player's permanent rights at the end of this season. What else do we know about Manny Perez?
Oh, this is a Sebastian Berhalter like deal too, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Two in-season loans with option to buy, which we know are rare. So yes, he was originally with Glasgow Celtic I don't know. FC
Celtic. Yeah, it's
Celtic.
The team mainly known as Celtic. If you hear people talking about Celtic in Scotland, this is the team.
Yeah, but originally from North Carolina, but with them, and then was sent back on loan to USL Championships North Carolina FC for 2019 and 2020. And as far as I understand, like a lot of that was related to visa issues, not related to performance.
Yeah, so he actually never played for Celtic. He was signed, and I don't think he was ever able to get a visa. So they essentially immediately loaned him back to USL, and he never got a chance to play. But was apparently pretty highly rated if Celtic was signing him out of college there. So also another interesting thing about this is Portland acquired him from Celtic, and then so Portland acquired him from a club he never played a game for. Then he never played a game for Portland and is coming directly to Austin on loan. And so he's got a pretty interesting transfer history already. I think one of the most interesting things about this is, and this is something that Elliot McKinley pointed out on Twitter, and then Chris Bills also pointed out in his article on the Striker today. But Perez played for U.S. youth teams, like U.S. youth international teams. And so he is on the MLS allocation list. Austin FC have the number 1 pick in the allocation order, and Portland have the number 15 pick, which means that Austin passed him up in the allocation order, and that they would have had to for him to fall to Portland, who took him at number 15. So that means Austin wanted him enough to pay Portland for him. They're going to pay Portland some money if they end up bringing him on permanently. So they wanted him enough to pay for him, but they didn't want him enough to give up that number 1 spot. So my question is, who or what are they saving that spot for?
Well, I mean, I don't have the allocation list right in front of me, but Weston McKennie, I think, is on it. Like, it's probably we're gonna bring him back home and do it. That's my plan.
Bring him to Texas. Yeah, it means my hope is, I mean, I don't know if I have a specific hope for it, but it means they either have a player on the allocation list in mind to use that money on, or they know another team has their eye on someone on the allocation list and are hoping to sell that spot for money, or trade it for money. So that'll be something interesting to keep an eye on as we approach the summer transfer window, where Austin is expected to sign their third DP. So I don't know. Maybe I imagine there's going to be a lot of Austin fans studying that allocation list after today. But we'll have to wait and see what comes of it.
The other thing that means is it's the end of the Luis Argudo experiment, right? I think that's very clear, and he looked pretty good in preseason, but we felt like there were some holdups about basically how much money he wanted to get paid versus how much he would play.
Yeah, I think so. We saw this news come out, and I kind of assumed that meant okay, Argudo's done, and then Chris Bills was able to confirm that Argudo is no longer training with the team and has moved on. I was looking up. I haven't watched any of Perez. I don't really know what kind of player he is, but based on position listings in Y-Scout, he's played mostly right wing back, has played a little bit of fullback, but mostly kind of a wing back position, or like a wide midfielder / wing back position. So again, wingers FC, we've got tons of wingers, but it could be kind of a situation with Hector Jimenez, who just kind of a utility player, can kind of slot in in a lot of different places. We seem to be pretty well stocked on the left side now that we have Kolmanich and Stanley, and then Sweat if he's back healthy. On the right side, really, it's just Lima who's a true right back, and then Jimenez is kind of the backup there now. So maybe they're looking at him as a backup there and someone who can also play in the midfield a little bit, but I honestly don't know what position they're looking at him for. In any case, he's probably going to be on a supplemental roster spot and won't really be expected to contribute a ton to the starting 11. But yeah, as a new team, we just need some of those depth pieces. We just have far fewer players top to bottom than established teams do right now.
Yeah, he didn't even rate green smoke, like every other announcement we had. But
yeah, early on, every
okay.
player got green smoke, but I can't remember. I think maybe it was Big Celery. What's his name?
Yes, Schoenfeld. Schoenfeld was the first person who didn't get smoke. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think after a certain point, like, okay, only the big players get green smoke. If you're TAM or higher from this point forward, that's when you get green smoke. If you're supplemental roster spot, no smoke for you. All right. Anything else before we finish up, Jeremiah?
I think we've covered it all.
All right. Awesome. We'd like to remind you again to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are still running the offer that we mentioned on the last episode, where if you leave us a review, let us know about it. We're going to make a $5 donation to the Central Texas Food Bank, and then we'll also send you some Moon Tower Soccer stickers. I think we've had over 10 people write in letting us know that they've done it so far. And so really great response. We'd love hearing from you. Just like hearing in from you. People that I haven't really spoken to have reached out and said hi, which is really great. And then also we love seeing the reviews. We don't care what you say in the review. We don't care how many stars you give us. Just give us a review and we're going to give some money to a good cause. So leave us a review. Also go visit the Striker Texas website. Do you have any articles you want to point out this week, Jeremiah?
Well, I would go back to a review because I want to go back to Colby
Faulkner
Faulkner James.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Colby Faulkner James left a review of a 5-star. Colby, I spent a lot of time with because he's a drummer in La Murga this weekend, and he was in Portland, but he absolutely knew where to hit us. And his review is, Jeremiah and Landon have the best Austin FC podcast in the game, but they drastically underrate Danny Houston's looks in favor of lesser-looking boys. So I'm glad that we continued the whole commitment to. I mean, we just got a handsome team at this point. I don't think there's I don't think there's any other way around it.
And Colby, if it makes you feel better, my wife had Houston rated pretty highly in her power rankings. So he is on the radar. There's just, again, there's so many handsome boys, and let's just enjoy these beautiful boys.
So I think, yes, absolutely. So the question about the Striker website, this happens every week, but maybe I only noticed it this week because it's Austin, but there's a Striker Texas Player of the Week from a Texas-based team, and this week it was Cecilio Dominguez. So I would encourage everybody to check out Chris Bill's article about Cecilio and everything he did this week against Colorado.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We will be back in 1 week with a new episode of Moon Tower Soccer, where we'll review the match against Minnesota United, and then we'll also preview the following match against Sporting Kansas City. And then we'll cover any other Austin FC news that happens in between now and then. We'll talk to you soon. Until then, my name's Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.